The conference hall on Geneva Station fell silent as the holographic message played for the third time. Ambassador Director Sarah Chen stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the faces of Earth Security Council members as they absorbed the Vrex Dominion's ultimatum. The alien's reptilian features filled the projection, scales gleaming under harsh lighting, forked tongue flickering between words. Humanity will surrender all colony worlds beyond your home system within 30 solar rotations. You will accept vassal status under Vrex authority. Refusal means total war. We have spoken. The message ended abruptly, replaced by the emblem of the Vrex Dominion, a clawed fist crushing a star. General Morrison broke the silence first. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his knuckles were white against the table's edge. How many ships do they have? Latest intelligence suggests 10,000 warships, Sarah replied quietly. Most are dreadnought class or larger. Their military-industrial capacity exceeds ours by a factor of 20. And the Galactic Council? President Okonkwo asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Sarah touched her tablet, bringing up another recording. This one showed the council chambers, a vast circular arena where representatives from 47 species deliberated on matters affecting the galaxy. The speaker, a gaseous being contained within a crystalline suit, addressed the assembly with typical council detachment. The matter of territorial dispute between the Vrex Dominion and the human provisional membership falls outside council jurisdiction. Humanity has not achieved full member status. The council will not intervene in what amounts to an internal reorganization of claim boundaries. Someone in the Security Council chamber cursed. Sarah understood the sentiment. 50 years ago, humanity had celebrated joining the galactic community. They had followed every protocol, respected every boundary, played by every rule. And now, when those rules should have protected them, the council hid behind technicalities. They're abandoning us, Admiral Kowalski said flatly. The elderly officer had commanded Earth's defense forces for 2 decades. They won't lift a finger while the Vrex dismantle everything we've built. Worse than that, Sarah added. I've reviewed the private communications. Many council species see this as inevitable, natural selection on a galactic scale. They think we're too young, too aggressive, too unstable. Some are actually relieved the Vrex are handling what they see as the human problem. The room erupted in angry voices. Sarah let them vent for a moment before raising her hand. The gesture commanded respect. She had spent 5 years navigating council politics, and everyone in this room knew the toll it had taken on her. The question before us is simple, she said. Do we surrender or do we fight? Fight with what? Minister Zhang challenged. They outnumber us, outgun us. We've spent 50 years building colonies, not battleships. The Council's precious peace accords limited our military development, while the Vrex armed themselves without restriction. That's not entirely accurate, General Morrison interjected. He glanced at Admiral Kowalski, who nodded slowly. We may have followed the letter of Council regulations, but we never stopped being human. We never forgot our history. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had suspected something like this existed, but confirmation still shocked her. What are you saying, General? Morrison stood, walking to the chamber's windows. Beyond the glass, Earth hung in the darkness like a blue jewel. Do you know what the Council species call us behind closed doors? The War Apes, the Death Worlders. They study our history like it's a horror show. World Wars I and II, nuclear weapons, genocides, conflicts that never end, just pause. They can't understand it. Most Council races have been peaceful for 10,000 years or more. War is theoretical to them, an ancient memory. And to us? President Okonkwo asked softly. To us, it's Tuesday, Admiral Kowalski replied with grim humor. We've been preparing since first contact. Protocol Reaper. Every contingency, every strategy, every weapon system we could develop while staying within Council regulations. Some things we developed that definitely weren't within regulations, buried deep enough that inspectors never found them. Sarah's mind raced. The implications were staggering. You're talking about violating treaties, using restricted technologies. I'm talking about survival, Morrison said bluntly. The Council's rules were written by species that had the luxury of evolving past their violent phases naturally. We didn't get that luxury. We've been one disaster away from extinction our entire existence. We learned to be dangerous because anything less meant death. The chamber fell silent again. Sarah looked at each face around the table. These were the people responsible for 8 billion lives on Earth and another 2 billion across the colonies. The weight of that responsibility hung heavy in the recycled air. We need to vote, President Okonkwo said finally. Full transparency. If we choose war, there's no going back. The Council will condemn us. The Vrex will come with everything they have. We could lose everything. If we surrender, we lose everything anyway, Zhang countered. Just slowly. Our children will grow up as subjects of the Vrex Empire. Our colonies will be stripped of resources. Everything humanity has accomplished will belong to someone else. Sarah thought about her own daughter, studying engineering on New Britannia colony. She thought about the thousands of human families who had risked everything to build new worlds. She thought about the future the Vrex would steal from all of them. Let's vote, she agreed. The process took only minutes. Each member of the Security Council cast their vote privately, the results tabulated by the secure system. When the tally appeared on the central display, Sarah felt her breath catch. Unanimous. Every single vote for resistance. President Okonkwo stood, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Then it's decided. General Morrison, Admiral Kowalski, activate Protocol Reaper. Ambassador Chen, you have one task left in your official capacity. Sarah understood immediately. The broadcast. Yes, the galaxy needs to understand what they've done, what they've unleashed. Okonkwo's eyes hardened. The Council thinks we're primitive. The Vrex thinks we're weak. They're about to learn they're both wrong. Sarah nodded slowly. She had spent 5 years trying to make humanity acceptable to the galaxy. Now she would spend one final message showing them what humanity really was. I'll need access to the historical archives, she said quietly. All of them. The Council species need to see what humans do when we're backed into a corner. You'll have everything you need, Morrison promised. As the meeting adjourned, Sarah remained at the window staring at Earth below. Somewhere down there in museums and digital libraries lay the complete record of human warfare, centuries of conflict, millennia of blood and innovation born from desperation. The galaxy was about to receive an education. The Vrex wanted war. Now they would learn what that word truly meant when applied to humanity. The broadcast went out across every galactic channel simultaneously. Council protocols were supposed to prevent such massive transmissions without authorization. But humanity's tech specialists had found vulnerabilities in systems designed by peaceful species who never imagined anyone would exploit them. Within seconds, the message reached every inhabited world in Council space. Sarah Chen appeared on screens across the galaxy. She wore no formal robes, no ceremonial dress. Just a simple black suit, standing alone against a backdrop of Earth. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but her eyes held something that made viewers uncomfortable. Determination. The kind that came from absolute certainty. This message is for the Vrex Dominion, the Galactic Council, and every species watching, she began, her voice clear and unwavering. The Vrex have demanded humanity's surrender. The Council has chosen not to intervene, so be it. We will answer the Vrex in the only language they seem to understand. The image changed. Historical footage began playing, drawn from Earth's vast archives. The Battle of Verdun, bodies piled in trenches. The bombing of Dresden, cities turned to ash. Hiroshima, the mushroom cloud rising like a pillar of death. Footage played of human soldiers in every era, fighting with every weapon from stone axes to plasma rifles. Sarah's voice continued over the images. You call us young, primitive, aggressive. You study our history like we're some kind of aberration. You're right that we're different, but you've never understood what that difference means. More footage appeared. The siege of Leningrad, where humans had eaten leather to survive. The Warsaw Uprising, where resistance fighters held out with stolen weapons against overwhelming force. Images of nuclear arsenals, hundreds of warheads designed to end civilization. Spacecraft bristling with weapons that violated every Council regulation. Every species in the Council evolved on peaceful worlds. You developed space travel through cooperation. You formed your societies around harmony. War became something your ancestors left behind thousands of years ago. Sarah continued. The footage shifted again, showing peaceful Council species going about their daily lives. Markets full of different aliens trading goods, scientific conferences where knowledge was shared freely. Humanity evolved differently. Earth has tried to kill us since the moment we climbed down from the trees. Ice ages, plagues, predators that could tear us apart, volcanoes that blotted out the sun. We survived not because we were strong, but because we were adaptable. Because we learned to work together even when we hated each other. Because we mastered the art of killing anything that threatened us. The transmission showed battle after battle, not glorifying them, but showing the brutal efficiency of human warfare, the strategic thinking, the technological innovation driven by military necessity, the absolutely terrifying human capacity for organized violence when survival demanded it. You think our wars make us primitive, Sarah said, and now her voice carried an edge. You're wrong. Our wars made us survivors. Every conflict taught us lessons. Every defeat showed us weaknesses to fix. Every victory was dissected to extract maximum knowledge. While your ancestors were building utopias, ours were building the most efficient killing machines evolution ever produced. On a dozen worlds, council representatives watched in growing horror. This wasn't how provisional members behaved. This wasn't how anyone was supposed to talk to the council. But they couldn't stop watching. The footage changed to show human technological advancement. Nuclear power born from weapons research. Rocket science developed to deliver warheads. Computer systems created to calculate missile trajectories. Medical advances driven by battlefield necessity. Humanity had turned everything into a weapon, or learned from weapons how to build everything else. The Vrex Dominion has issued an ultimatum. They expect us to surrender or be destroyed. The Council expects us to accept our place in the natural order. Sarah paused, and for just a moment something like sadness crossed her face. We expected better from both of you. We hoped that intelligence and civilization meant something more than might making right. We were wrong. The image behind her changed one final time. It showed Earth's orbital shipyards suddenly revealed in their true scope. Hundreds of vessels under construction. The moon, its far side covered in installations that had been carefully hidden from Council surveys. Mars, where terraforming equipment concealed military production facilities. The asteroid belt, where rocks that should have been empty showed faint energy signatures. You wanted war, Sarah said, and her voice dropped to something cold and final. Now brace yourself for what follows. The transmission ended. For several long moments the galaxy sat in stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. On the Vrex homeworld, Emperor Kravik smashed his communicator against the wall. Primitive theatrics. She shows us images of them killing each other and expects us to fear. They're savages with stolen technology, nothing more. His military advisors were less certain. Grand Admiral Thex had studied human history more carefully than most. Majesty, perhaps we should reconsider the timeline. Give our intelligence division more opportunity to assess their actual capabilities. We have assessed their capabilities, Kravik snapped. They have 200 warships against our 10,000. Their colonies are spread thin. Their homeworld is fat and slow from Council peace. This will be over in weeks. As you command, Majesty, Thex replied. But privately he wondered if anyone had truly considered what 8 billion humans defending their homeworld might be capable of. In the council chambers, panic reigned. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding action, condemnation, intervention. The speaker struggled to maintain order. The humans have violated 17 protocols with that broadcast alone. The Zenithar representative shrieked. They've revealed military installations hidden from inspections. They've threatened violence. They must be sanctioned immediately. Sanctioned how? The Pelian delegate countered. They've already withdrawn from council authority. And in case anyone forgot, they just showed us they've been building weapons while we weren't looking. Maybe we should consider why they felt the need to do that. Are you defending them? I'm saying we pushed a dangerous species into a corner and acted surprised when they bared their teeth. The argument raged on, but several species remained silent. They reviewed the footage Sarah had transmitted, studying it carefully. Some saw only primitive brutality, but a few, the older and wiser species, saw something else. They saw pattern, strategy, the systematic application of violence toward specific goals. They saw what Sarah had been trying to tell them. Humans didn't fight like animals. They fought like chess masters who happened to use bullets instead of pawns. Deep in the Sol system, aboard the stealth carrier Phantom, Captain Marcus Webb received his orders. Protocol Reaper was active. The experimental fleet that officially didn't exist was deploying. Around him, 50 vessels powered up systems that Council inspectors had never detected, using technology that humanity had developed in secret specifically for this moment. All ships report ready, his executive officer reported. Stealth systems online. Weapons armed. We await your command, Captain. Marcus looked at the tactical display showing the Vrex fleet's projected approach vector. 10,000 ships. The largest invasion force in recorded galactic history, coming to crush humanity and prove that might made right. Helm, set course for intercept position, Marcus ordered calmly. And send a message to Admiral Kowalski. Tell him the ghosts are moving into position. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Automated defense systems came online. Hidden weapons revealed themselves. Sleeper cells of human intelligence operatives activated on Vrex worlds. The machinery of total war, built carefully over 50 years while the Council watched and saw nothing, began to move. Sarah Chen had delivered her warning. Now humanity would deliver the lesson. The galaxy was about to learn what the phrase total war truly meant when humanity spoke it. The Vrex forward fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Britannia system, with the confidence of predators who had never met resistance. 2,000 warships, their hulls painted in the red and black of the Dominion, weapons systems active and scanning for targets. Fleet Commander Zach stood on his flagship's bridge, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. "Scan complete," his sensor officer reported. "We are detecting the human defense fleet. 300 vessels in standard formation around the colony world." Zach's scales rippled with amusement. 300. They gathered everything they had to make one final stand. How predictable. How pointless. He activated fleet-wide communications. "All ships, battle formation." "We will crush them quickly and move on to the next system. Show these primitives what real military power looks like." The Vrex Armada advanced in perfect formation, a tactic that had won them control of 300 star systems. Overwhelming force applied with precision. It had never failed them. Why would today be different? Aboard the human flagship Defiant, Admiral Patricia Reeves watched the Vrex approach with cold calculation. Her ship was one of only 50 actual warships in the defensive fleet. The rest were converted colony transports and mining vessels, hastily fitted with whatever weapons they could carry. They wouldn't last 5 minutes against the Vrex. That was exactly the plan. "All ships hold formation," she ordered. "Wait for my signal. Remember, every second we buy matters." Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Chang, spoke quietly. "Admiral, Captain Webb confirms the swarm is in position. Stealth protocols holding. The Vrex haven't detected anything." Patricia allowed herself a thin smile. 50 years of council oversight and they never learned. They looked for big ships, massive installations, conventional military power. They never thought to look for the small things. She touched her communicator. "All ships engage the enemy. Give them a show." The human fleet opened fire, missiles and kinetic rounds streaming toward the Vrex formation. The aliens returned fire with devastating accuracy. Human ships began dying immediately, their shields overwhelmed by the sheer volume of incoming weapons. Explosions bloomed in the darkness as vessels were torn apart. Zax watched the slaughter with satisfaction. As expected, they fight bravely but uselessly. Continue advance. In 10 minutes, this system will belong to the Dominion. 8 minutes later, everything changed. The first indication something was wrong came from the sensor officer, whose voice carried confusion. "Commander, I'm detecting multiple small energy signatures. Thousands of them. They're appearing all around the fleet." "Define small," Zax demanded. "Individual objects, each one approximately 2 meters across. They're emerging from stealth at close range. Commander, there are 50,000 of them surrounding our formation." Zax felt ice run through his veins. That wasn't possible. Stealth systems couldn't hide that many objects that close. His sensors should have detected mass displacement, thermal signatures, something. Unless... "Evasive action! All ships, emergency dispersal pattern," he roared, but he already knew it was too late. Captain Marcus Webb, watching from 30,000 kilometers away aboard the Phantom, spoke a single word into his communicator. "Execute." 50,000 automated drones, each packed with enough antimatter to vaporize a city block, activated simultaneously. They had spent the last week drifting silently into position, powered down to the point where they were nearly indistinguishable from space debris. Now they woke up, identified the nearest Vrex vessel, and did exactly what human engineers had designed them to do. The Vrex forward fleet ceased to exist in 11 seconds. 2,000 warships, the pride of the Dominion military, simply disappeared in a cascade of antimatter detonations. The explosions were so massive, so numerous, that they created a temporary nebula of superheated plasma and debris. Sensors across 3 star systems registered the energy release. It would be visible to astronomers for decades. When the light faded, 17 Vrex ships remained. They had been at the extreme edge of the formation and had managed to jump to faster-than-light speed before the drones reached them. They fled in different directions, their crews traumatized and broken. Marcus sat back in his command chair watching the tactical display. 17 survivors out of 2,000. The Vrex had just lost more military assets in 11 seconds than they had in the last century of conquest. "Sir, should we pursue the survivors?" his weapons officer asked. "Negative. Let them run. Let them report what happened here." Marcus smiled coldly. "Fear is a weapon too, and we just gave the Vrex Empire something to be very afraid of." The news of the massacre at New Britannia spread across the galaxy within hours. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, but the representatives could barely speak. They had seen the recordings transmitted by the surviving Vrex ships. 50,000 weapons appearing from nowhere, an entire fleet destroyed in seconds, the kind of overwhelming brutal efficiency that none of them had seen in millennia. "This is monstrous," the Zenithar representative whispered. "They lured the Vrex into a trap and slaughtered them. There was no honor, no fair combat. Just murder." "There's no such thing as fair combat," a new voice said. The council chambers fell silent as Ambassador Chen appeared via holographic transmission. She wasn't supposed to have access to council channels anymore, but clearly humanity's technical capabilities had been seriously underestimated. "You all seem shocked," Sarah continued. "Did you think we were bluffing? Did you think the broadcast was empty theater?" She gestured, and tactical data filled the space around her projection. "This is just the beginning. The Vrex came looking for easy conquest. They found total war instead." "You violated every principle of civilized conflict," the speaker protested. "Civilized conflict," Sarah repeated and laughed bitterly. "You live in a galaxy where the strong prey on the weak, where provisional members have no rights, where the council watches genocide approach and does nothing. Don't lecture us about civilization when you created the system that made this necessary." As Sarah's transmission ended, new reports began flooding into the council. Vrex supply depots were exploding across their territory. Communication networks were failing. Military computer systems were being corrupted by viruses that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their security. Something was systematically dismantling the Vrex war machine, and it was happening far too quickly to be coincidence. On the Vrex colony world of Kethrix, the garrison commander received reports that made no sense. Soldiers were falling ill with a plague that targeted Vrex physiology specifically. Water supplies were contaminated. Computer systems were showing impossible errors. And strangest of all, there were rumors of human operatives, agents who had been living undercover for years, waiting for exactly this moment. Captain Webb's stealth fleet struck another target, this time a major Vrex shipyard. The human vessels appeared from nowhere, destroyed the facility's defenses in minutes, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The message was clear: nowhere was safe. No target was out of reach. Emperor Kravik, receiving hourly reports of disasters across his empire, finally understood what Sarah Chen had been trying to tell them. The humans weren't fighting a conventional war. They were fighting every kind of war simultaneously. Military strikes, cyber warfare, biological attacks, psychological operations, economic disruption. Every weapon humanity had ever developed or imagined, deployed all at once with terrifying coordination. "How many humans do they have conducting these operations?" he demanded of his intelligence chief. "We don't know, Majesty. We can't tell which attacks are automated and which involve actual human agents. They're using confusion as a weapon, making us see threats everywhere." Kravik slumped in his throne. 2,000 ships gone in seconds. Infrastructure failing across the Empire, an enemy that could apparently strike anywhere, anytime. And the worst part was knowing that the main Vrex fleet, 8,000 warships, was still 2 weeks away from reaching Earth. He had sent them to crush humanity's homeworld, but now he wondered if he had just sent them to their deaths. The galaxy watched in horror as humanity demonstrated exactly what Sarah Chen had warned them about. This wasn't primitive savagery. This was war elevated to an art form by a species that had spent its entire existence perfecting it. The Council species had evolved past violence. Humanity had evolved violence itself. The Vrex main battle fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system 3 weeks after the massacre at New Britannia. 8,000 warships, the largest armada Emperor Kravik could assemble, dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. On the flagship Domination's Fist, Grand Admiral Thex studied the tactical displays with growing unease. "Sensor sweep complete," the scanning officer reported. "We're detecting minimal defensive presence. Approximately 100 human vessels in orbit around their homeworld. The asteroid belt shows standard mining activity. No significant military installations detected." Thex's mandibles twitched. Something was wrong. After what happened at New Britannia, after the raids that had crippled supply lines across the Empire, the humans were defending their homeworld with only 100 ships? It didn't make sense. Unless it was another trap. "Full spectrum scan," he ordered. "Active sensors, every frequency. If they're hiding something, I want to know about it." The scans revealed nothing unusual, just a system like any other, with a blue planet orbiting its yellow star. The asteroid belt showed normal thermal signatures. The mining operations appeared legitimate. Mars had terraforming equipment, exactly as records indicated. The moon was just a moon, airless and dead. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Earth," the communications officer said. Admiral Kowalski's weathered face appeared on screen. The human looked tired, older than the intelligence files suggested. "This is Admiral Kowalski of the Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of our territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Thex almost laughed. 100 ships against 8,000, and the human was making demands. "Admiral Kowalski, your species has caused significant damage to the Virex Dominion. This ends now. Surrender your world and we will show mercy. Resist and we will reduce your planet to ash." "You really should have learned from New Britannia," Kowalski replied quietly. "But I suppose some lessons need to be repeated." He gestured off-screen. Fire. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the asteroid belt exploded. Rocks that had seemed perfectly normal revealed themselves as hollowed-out weapons platforms. Hundreds of them containing railguns, missile batteries, and directed energy weapons, all aimed directly at the Vrex fleet. Asteroids that humanity had been modifying for 50 years, converting entire mountains of rock into fortress bombs, detonated in sequence. The Vrex formation, confident in their numerical superiority, had advanced in tight grouping. Standard doctrine for overwhelming force. It was a fatal mistake. The asteroid weapons released their payloads in a coordinated salvo that had been planned and programmed decades in advance. Kinetic kill vehicles moving at fractional light speed, missiles by the thousands, energy beams that could cut through capital ship armor. 500 Vrex warships died in the first minute. "Evasive action," Thex roared. "Break formation, scatter." But the human trap had multiple layers. As the Vrex fleet dispersed, trying to escape the asteroid kill zone, the moon revealed its true nature. The entire far side, hidden from casual observation, was one massive weapons platform. Railgun batteries that had been constructed underground over 5 decades opened fire. Each shot was precisely calculated, targeting ships that were trying to flee toward the outer system. Mars joined the attack moments later. What had appeared to be terraforming equipment were actually launch systems for kinetic weapons. The planet had been turned into a massive artillery platform, and now it rained death on the invading fleet. Thex watched in horror as his armada was torn apart. This wasn't combat. This was systematic execution. The humans had turned their entire star system into a weapon, and they were using it with terrifying precision. "Return fire! All weapons, maximum rate," he commanded, but it was chaos now. His ships were scattered, trying to evade attacks coming from multiple directions. Coordinated response was impossible. Earth's orbital stations, which scans had identified as civilian installations, suddenly revealed weapon systems. They weren't as powerful as the asteroid platforms, but they added to the overwhelming volume of fire. The 100 human warships that had been visible began moving, not to attack but to herd. They were pushing the Vrex fleet into specific zones, optimizing the kill boxes. On Earth, deep beneath Geneva in a command bunker that could survive a direct nuclear strike, Admiral Kowalski watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Beside him, General Morrison coordinated ground-based defenses while President Okonkwo observed in silence. "Casualty reports?" Kowalski asked quietly. "We've lost 12 orbital stations and 17 warships," the tactical officer replied. "Approximately 40,000 casualties, mostly civilian workers who couldn't evacuate in time. 40,000 dead." Kowalski felt the weight of each life, but the alternative was 8 billion. He had made his choice when he activated Protocol Reaper. He would live with it or die with it, but he wouldn't hesitate. Continue engagement. Target their command ships. I want their leadership dead. In space, the battle raged for 3 more hours. The Vrex fought desperately, trying to regroup, trying to find a way through the devastating crossfire. Some ships made it to Earth's orbit and began bombardment. But Earth's ground-based defenses were just as comprehensive as the space-based ones. Anti-ship weapons rose from hidden silos. Fighter craft launched from underground hangars. Even the ocean revealed weapons platforms, surfacing from depths where they had waited for exactly this scenario. Captain Marcus Webb's stealth fleet, returning from raids deep in Vrex territory, arrived at the battle's climax. His 50 ships, invisible to Vrex sensors, positioned themselves behind the enemy formation and opened fire. It was the final blow. The Vrex fleet, already decimated and disorganized, broke completely. Grand Admiral Thex watched his flagship's bridge explode around him as a human kinetic round punched through the armor. His last thought was that he should have listened to the warnings. Should have understood what humanity truly was. Then the secondary explosions reached the command deck and he knew nothing at all. Of 8,000 Vrex warships that entered the Sol system, fewer than 300 escaped. They fled in every direction, all coordination lost, all discipline shattered. They were pursued by human drones and harassed by long-range fire until they reached the system's edge and jumped to faster-than-light speed. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won, but the cost was staggering. 17,000 dead on the human side. Orbital infrastructure worth trillions destroyed. Parts of Earth's surface bore scars from orbital bombardment that would take decades to heal. The moon's far side would need complete reconstruction. Mars had expended weapons that couldn't be quickly replaced. But Earth still stood. Humanity survived. And across the galaxy, every species received the recordings of the battle. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated what total war actually meant. Not random violence, not primitive savagery, but the complete transformation of an entire star system into an integrated weapons platform. The result of 50 years of preparation and planning, the systematic application of overwhelming force with surgical precision. Sarah Chen, watching the recordings from Geneva Station, felt tears on her face for the first time since the crisis began. They had won. They had proven humanity's right to exist. But the price in lives, the price in innocence lost, was almost unbearable. Ambassador Chen, President Okonkwo's voice cut through her thoughts. We're receiving transmission requests from the Vrex homeworld. Emperor Kravik wants to negotiate. Sarah wiped her eyes and straightened her suit. No, not yet. We accepted their ultimatum and they came anyway. Now they'll accept ours. She pulled up the tactical map showing Vrex space. General Morrison, deploy the retribution fleets. If the Vrex want peace, they'll get it, but only after we ensure they can never threaten us again. Morrison nodded slowly. The fleets are ready. 2,500 ships, all of them aimed at Vrex military targets. We won't occupy. We won't conquer. But we'll dismantle every weapon, every shipyard, every installation that could threaten humanity or anyone else. The order went out. Humanity, bloodied but unbroken, took the war to the Vrex Empire itself. Not for conquest, but for something that terrified the Vrex even more: justice. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Captain Marcus Webb stood on the surface of the Vrex homeworld and watched their sun set over an alien horizon. The planet's capital city sprawled before him, its towers still standing, but its military installations systematically dismantled. Human ships patrolled the skies, not as conquerors, but as enforcers of the peace humanity had imposed. Emperor Kravik approached slowly, his scales dull with defeat. Once the most powerful being in 300 star systems, he now looked small and old. Marcus, recently promoted to admiral after his crucial role in the war, remained at attention as the former emperor reached him. You have destroyed our military, Kravik said quietly, dismantled our shipyards, disabled our weapons. We are defenseless now. Yes, Marcus agreed simply. That was the point. Why not conquer us? Why not rule over us as we would have ruled over you? There was genuine confusion in the alien's voice. Marcus considered the question carefully. Because we don't want an empire, Emperor. We just want to be left alone. You forced us to prove we couldn't be conquered. Now you'll spend the next 200 years proving you can be trusted. The treaty terms were harsh but not cruel. Complete demilitarization for 20 years, followed by restricted military forces for the next 180. Reparations paid not in currency, but in technology and resources to help rebuild Earth. Most importantly, a binding non-aggression pact enforced not by words but by human monitoring stations positioned throughout former Vrex space. Your people will hate us, Kravik said. Probably, Marcus acknowledged. But they'll be alive to do it. That's more than you offered us. He gestured toward the city. Your economy still functions. Your people still govern themselves. Your culture remains intact. We could have done what you planned for us. Instead, we're giving you a future, just a different one than you imagined. Kravik was silent for a long moment. I underestimated you. We all did. We saw your history of wars and thought you were merely violent. We didn't understand that your violence had purpose, strategy, that you had elevated conflict to an art form. War isn't an art, Marcus replied coldly. It's a tragedy. But it's one humanity has always been forced to excel at. Maybe now the galaxy will understand that strength without mercy is tyranny. But mercy without strength is just weakness waiting to be exploited. 3 months later, Earth orbit. The Galactic Council had convened an emergency session for the 47th time since the war ended. This time they had finally worked up the courage to send an official delegation to humanity. Sarah Chen, still technically ambassador though her official status remained unclear, met them aboard Geneva Station. The council delegation was led by the speaker himself, along with representatives from the most powerful member species. They looked uncomfortable in the human-designed meeting room, sitting in chairs made for different anatomy, breathing air that smelled wrong to them. Ambassador Chen, the speaker began carefully, the Council has concluded its investigation into the recent conflict. We find that humanity employed excessive force in response to the Vrex threat. Furthermore, the revelation of hidden military capabilities represents multiple treaty violations. The Council must condemn these actions. Sarah listened without expression, then smiled coldly. Condemn away. We're no longer interested in Council approval. The Zenithar representative shifted uncomfortably. You cannot simply withdraw from the galactic community. There are trade agreements, technological exchanges, diplomatic protocols, all of which we followed faithfully for 50 years while you looked the other way when we were threatened, Sarah interrupted. The Vrex violated every principle of Council law when they issued their ultimatum. You did nothing. So we solved the problem ourselves. If that makes us unacceptable to the Council, then the Council is unacceptable to us. You're making a mistake, the speaker warned. Isolation will hurt you more than it hurts us. Will it? General Morrison entered the room, followed by representatives from 6 other species. Small species, minor members of the Council who had always been overshadowed by the major powers. These are our new allies. The Terran Coalition, species who were tired of being ignored, threatened, and marginalized. Together, we represent nearly 40 star systems and growing. We'll trade among ourselves, defend each other, build our own future. The Council delegates looked at each other in alarm. This was worse than simple human defiance. This was the formation of an alternative power bloc. President Okonkwo, joining the meeting via hologram, spoke with calm authority. The Council was built on a simple principle, that collective security and shared prosperity benefit everyone. But somewhere along the way you forgot that security means protecting the weak, not ignoring them. Prosperity means fair trade, not exploitation. You created a system where might makes right, then condemned us for being mighty. What do you want from us? The Pelian delegate asked, speaking for the first time. Unlike the others, he seemed genuinely curious rather than defensive. Nothing, Sarah said simply. We don't want your approval, your trade, or your protection. We've learned we can't rely on any of those things. Build your council. Make your rules. We'll build something better. The Council delegation left Earth space without achieving anything. In their report, they would describe humanity as dangerous, unpredictable, and potentially destabilizing to galactic peace. They would recommend continued observation and limited engagement. They would miss the point entirely. 10 years passed. The Terran Coalition grew to 53 member species. Human technology, particularly military innovations adapted for civilian use, revolutionized coalition space. Trade flourished. New colonies were founded. And importantly, wars of conquest became extinct in coalition space. Not because warfare was banned, but because everyone remembered what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The Vurex, true to the treaty, rebuilt their society without military aggression. A new generation grew up learning the history of the war, understanding the terrible cost of imperial ambition. Some became advocates for peace. Others studied humanity obsessively, trying to understand how such a young species had defeated them so completely. Sarah Chen, now retired from diplomatic service, taught at the new Interspecies Academy on Earth. Her course on conflict resolution was the most popular in the curriculum, attended by students from dozens of species. She never glorified war, but she never apologized for humanity's actions either. The truth she taught was complex and often uncomfortable. One evening, an urgent message reached Earth from the Galactic Council. For the first time in a decade, they were requesting humanity's help. An extragalactic invasion force had been detected, moving toward Council space with overwhelming numbers. They had destroyed 3 civilizations already. The Council's military forces, designed for peacekeeping rather than warfare, were utterly inadequate. The message reached President Kim, Okonkwo's successor, during a coalition summit. She read it aloud to the assembled delegates, then looked at Sarah Chen, who had been invited as an honored guest. What should we do? President Kim asked. Sarah thought about the 10,000 Vrex ships that had come to destroy Earth. She thought about the Council that had watched and done nothing. She thought about the cost of war and the cost of peace. Finally, she spoke. We help them. Not because they deserve it, not because we've forgiven them, but because we're better than they were when we needed help. She paused, then added, but we do it on our terms. The Council learns to fight properly or they keep dying poorly. Their choice. The response was unanimous. The Terran Coalition would assist the Galactic Council, But the days of humanity begging for acceptance were over. Now the galaxy would learn from humanity, or it would fall to threats it couldn't understand. Ambassador Wei, Sarah's protege, delivered the coalition's response to the council delegation. You spent 50 years teaching us we were too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous. Now you're facing an enemy that makes the Vrex look peaceful, and you come to the species you condemned for understanding violence. Here's what we'll teach you. War isn't about honor or glory. It's not about fair combat or civilized rules. War is about survival, and humanity has spent 200,000 years learning to survive. The delegation was led to a secure briefing room, where coalition military advisors began, outlining strategies that made the council representatives uncomfortable. Asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, the systematic application of force against enemy logistics, psychological operations. Every brutal lesson humanity had learned through millennia of conflict. This is overwhelming, the speaker admitted after 3 hours of briefing. We're a peaceful people. This kind of thinking is alien to us. That's why you're losing, General Torres, Morrison's successor, replied bluntly. The invaders aren't peaceful. They're not going to negotiate. They're going to keep killing until someone stops them. We can teach you how to stop them, but you have to be willing to learn, to adapt, to become something you've never been before. The council species had a choice: remain pure and die, or learn from humanity and survive. They chose survival. Over the following months, coalition military advisors transformed council forces from peacekeepers into soldiers. It was a painful process, forcing species that had evolved past violence to remember how to wage it. But humanity never let them forget why they were learning. Sarah Chen, watching the training from Earth, felt an odd mixture of pride and sadness. Humanity had proven itself to the galaxy, but in doing so they had changed the galaxy forever. The age of peaceful expansion was over. Reality had intruded on the Council's utopian vision, and humanity was the teacher none of them wanted but all of them needed. Late one night, Marcus Webb, now serving as Coalition Supreme Commander, visited Sarah at her home overlooking the Pacific Ocean. They sat on her porch, drinking coffee and watching the stars. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Marcus asked quietly. "Teaching them to fight? Making them more like us?" Sarah was silent for a long time. "I think we gave them a choice we never had. We could adapt or die. Now they have the same choice. What they become is up to them. And us. What have we become?" "Survivors," Sarah replied simply. "Same as we've always been. The galaxy just finally understands what that means." Above them, human and coalition ships patrolled in harmony, guardians of a new order built not on peaceful ignorance, but on hard-learned strength. The broadcast from Earth had been a warning. The war with the Vrex had been a lesson. And now humanity would teach the galaxy one final truth: that peace without the capacity for war is just waiting to be conquered, but war without the wisdom for peace is just endless destruction. Humanity had found the balance. Whether the galaxy could learn it remained to be seen.